And I heard
Good morning. Welcome to Line by Line Bible Studies. So now we've come to the sixth trumpet, Revelation 9. Okay, let's just read it. Again, this is the second of the three woes. And the sixth angel sounded, and I heard a voice from the four horns of the golden altar which is before God, saying to the sixth angel, which had the trumpet, loose the four angels which are bound in the great river Euphrates. And the four angels were loosed, which were prepared for an hour, and a day, and a month, and a year, for to slay the third part of men. And the number of the army of the horsemen were 200,000. And I heard the number of them. Let's continue with it, and then we'll go detailed. And thus I saw the horses in the vision, and them that sat on them, having breastplates of fire, and of jacinth and brimstone. And the heads of the horses were as the heads of lions, and out of their mouths issued fire and smoke and brimstone. By these three was the third part of men killed, by the fire, and by the smoke, and by the brimstone, which issued out of their mouths. For their power is in their mouth, and in their tails. For their tails were like unto serpents, and had heads, and with them they do hurt. And the rest of the men, which were not killed by these plagues, yet repented not of the works of their hands, that they should not worship devils and the idols of gold and silver and brass and stone and of wood, which neither can see nor hear nor walk. Neither repented they of their murders, nor of their sorceries, nor of their fornication, nor of their thefts. So, yeah, this is a rough one as far as I'm concerned. It's the symbol. We can interpret some of the symbology, right? But I think it is intentionally the most mysterious trumpet. The literal thought of like horses having heads like lions and spitting out fire and smoke and brimstone, and that's quite fantastical. It'd be impossible to miss. And therefore, the sheer unusualness of it leads me to believe that we're talking about something that these are meant to be symbolic. There's something about it it's going to be not so obvious to recognize. But the overall theme is quite clear, that when these four angels are loosed, four angels which are bound in the great river Euphrates. So first it comes the voice from the four horns of the altar. I was like, the idea of a horn is a projection. And I was wondering if our literal translation of horn is kind of like, why do the altars have horns? Well, they have these edges, the corners had projections from them like horns. I don't know if they were literally meant to be horns. Or like we have the Horn of Africa. We use the term when something is shaped like a horn. So horn shaped. I don't think if it was meant on the altar to represent a horn. Often horns are also metaphorical for power. Like Moses came down from the Mount of Sinai, from Mount Sinai, with horns on his head, it says. And some people took that quite literally, as far as like there are old statues of, I remember, you look at it and you think like, who is that, Poseidon? It's like, no, Moses. It's like, oh, why does he have horns on his head? And for, because of that, you know, some people thought in more ignorant times that like Jews had horns. Like they literally thought they should expect to find that. So a voice comes from the altar. And we kind of seen this altar a little bit here and there in the seals. There's the altar before God, and underneath it that we have the souls of those that were slain. So the fact that this is coming from the altar, you know, this sounds like to me like the preparation for the revenge. Also, it's the sixth trumpet, and the Lord Jesus returns at the seventh trumpet. And there's also somewhat of a parallel in this trumpet to what you find in the vials. In the sixth vial, these spirits go out. 3 unclean spirits like frogs come out of the mouth of the dragon, the beast, and the false prophet. And they go forth to deceive people and to gather them together to the battle of that great day of God Almighty, into a place called in the Hebrew tongue Armageddon. The thing is, though, in the vials, it is 3 unclean spirits like frogs. Here it is 4 angels bound. I don't know what to make of the angels as far as are they, you know, inherently good or bad, but certainly they're bad news in that sense. Right? These are angels that are bringing about death. They're bound. That doesn't sound like something God does with good angels. Nice, good angels don't get bound in rivers to be loosed. And they were prepared. This for an hour, for a month, for a year, and for a day. For an hour, a day, a month, and a year. You know, that's means highly specified. You know, when it lays out all 3 like that, that's a sort of a saying that they are precisely prepared for a specific moment in time. And their purpose is to slay the third part of men. And then there's something about it says the 4 angels, right? And then it goes right to, and the number of the army of the horsemen were 200,000, which is 200,000 is 200 million. So there's an army of horsemen, 200,000, and these 4 angels. Are the angels representative of the army? You know, I'm like the jump when we go from the angels to the horsemen. I'm not sure how to draw those lines. You know, it goes right to the horsemen. Are we to identify the angels with the horsemen? And how their deaths come about is a question in my mind. It says, you know, like I said, and he sees the horses in the vision, and right, you know, it's a vision. So he's seeing in vision the 6th trumpet. He gets the vision of angels bound in a river, being loosed, and then they're loosed to kill all these people. He figures that out, and then all of a sudden he sees the vision of hundreds of millions of horsemen, of a massive army preparing for battle or going out to battle. And they ride upon these sort of supernaturally frightening creatures in his vision. Like I said, I see this as heavily connected to Armageddon. There's some connection here. But like I said, the lines you draw between the sixth vial and the sixth trumpet, they're both the sixth. But all I can say is that there's the presence of this army, and then there's also, they're gathering them together to the battle. In a sense, it almost feels like from verse, after they mention the angels, right? They're loosed, they're prepared for this, and then all of a sudden there's just the army appears. I don't think the 4 angels are the 3 unclean spirits like frogs, because it would use the same number, at least as far as I'm concerned. But those unclean spirits could be supplemental. The 4 angels are loosed, and then what's not said here, in between the 2 points, we could have the unclean spirits going forth to gather the army together. So they have breastplates of fire, of jacinth, and brimstone. I know fire and brimstone. I'm going to look up jacinth. There's probably not going to be, whenever you look up some of these things like gemstones or jacinth or whatever, you don't get much of a response. Let's see here. I'm going to share this craziness there. All right. And I'm just using Bible collection. I'm just going to bring you along because it's boring for me to go look this up. Period. Even more so when you can't see what I'm doing. Jacinth. Oh, what does that say? Huh. Hyacinth. I don't know anything about hyacinth. Except I don't know what it would have to do with. Let's Google that. What's the wrong keyboard? I can see what I've been searching for. I just want to know. Hyacinth. Some sort of flower. Richly colored flowers, an incredible fragrance that can perfume your entire garden. What a pretty flower. Interesting. Well, that definitely brings a lot of things to mind, does it not? Hyacinth. Breastplates. Of fire. And jacinth. Or hyacinth. Flowers and fire. And brimstone. So, I never really heard anyone's comment on that, and I guess, I don't know, I'll comment on that. I've never even, for some reason, I just always assumed jacinth was, I don't know how for so many years, I've never looked that up. I never even bothered. I don't know why not. I guess it just, the whole thing is so impenetrable on a lot of levels that I didn't say like, well, that's just one more part of the problem I don't know how to figure out. But it's an interesting variable to be thrown in there. Fire, jacinth, and brimstone breastplates. And it does play into the thought that there is some sort of... Yeah, but I don't... I found this army of horsemen to be the most confusing part. 200 million... He sees this massive army riding on these supernaturally strange steeds, and they have breastplates. Their protection is fire and flowers. And I mean, I get that. Like, I can't. That sounds like no protection at all, honestly. A breastplate of fire? Like usually when it wants to indicate strength, the breastplates are made out of iron, something strong. And I guess these are sort of very hellish things, fire and brimstone and flowers. You know, I mean, these are the thoughts that are running through my mind, like flowers, like garlands thrown on heroes. You know what I mean? Or funerals. Aromatic flowers to adorn funerals of the fallen. And then breastplates of fire and brimstone. You know, I guess I think like they're on their way to hell. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of like what it doesn't seem like a very good thing to have on you. Put on my breastplate of fire and brimstone and pretty flowers. Yeah, so that's a real head scratcher, huh? I mean, I know what the flowers. You know, when I wanted to interpret, I think, what do we use flowers for? To cover up the smell of decomposition on the dead. I mean, that's one of the things. That's why they give flowers at funerals, originally because they put flowers on dead people because they smell. You know, they start to smell of decomposition. I mean, now that's not the case because of embalming and all that. And the heads of the horses, whereas the heads of lions, and out of their mouths issued fire and smoke and brimstone. Fire, smoke, and brimstone. So that's different. Now, the heads of the horses are as the heads of lions. I mean, danger. It's interesting that it's the horses that are dangerous, and what the riders are kind of given second back seat here. And they have, and out of their mouths issues fire and smoke and brimstone, and that's what's killing people. By these three were the third part of men killed, by the fire, by the smoke, and the brimstone, which issued out of their mouths. Here's one way it occurs to me. You know, you have the horses and the men riding them. And in a sense, like if you go to war as a horseman, you need a horse, you know. And I don't expect to literally see horsemen. It's like we don't fight with that. But, you know, I mean, there's a sort of a call to go to war. And I don't know why. I just want to, for some reason, I don't see this army as, I see this army as self-destructive, is what I'm trying to get at and trying to put it together. It's like they're riding out to their own doom. And they're killed by the fire and smoke and brimstone. You know, it's sort of like fire and smoke and brimstone coming out of the mouth. I mean, that's real. I mean, we use that to this day. You know, he's a hellfire and brimstone preacher. Coming out of his mouth is hellfire and brimstone. And the horses are the steeds of war that carry them to the battle. You know what I mean? And out of their mouths comes fire and brimstone. You know, and I guess I'm thinking that being the cause of the deaths of so many people. It must have something to do with them calling them to war. With their talk of hellfire and brimstone. Like it's very hard for me to articulate this because I don't fully understand it. But that's definitely food for thought, I suppose. It's still impenetrable to me. I do think that it's one of those things, when you see it coming to pass, it'll be more obvious what it is. Of course, if you're a praetorist, this is the, I forgot, the locust army, I remember someone telling me that was some Muslim invasion of the Roman Empire or something like that. And if that's the case, then we don't need to worry about interpreting any of it. It's all interpreted. It was a bunch of things that happened long ago. Maybe I try too hard to understand the symbology, but I just feel like every part, it's not just thrown together willy-nilly. You know what I mean? It is meant to represent something. You know, you can slay by your words, like by, convincing people to go to their deaths. We want to be glorious. We will go and fight and blah, 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 blah. It'll be glorious, glorious. And they're seduced. Come, ride upon me to the battle. Ride upon me to your doom. It doesn't get said literally like that, but they're right. I'm trying to think of a song I heard, about, it was talking about war and the feeling of riding a battle wave. Riding a wave of emotion and feeling to the battle. You know what I mean? And none of us really have experienced this, but and maybe some people did around 9/11. I don't know. Around 9/11, my wife had given birth to my third child, and I was 28 and a bit old for all that. At least, not really, but you know what I mean. I was a bit too involved. So when something happens, like a great event, like before World War II, Pearl Harbor happens, and all the young men are just enlisting in the army because of the excitement. They're riding that wave of excitement that goes through the people, and take me to the battle. I want to fight. And I think perhaps that the horses here represent the spirit of battle, because a horse is a very powerful animal that represents a lot of things. When you see a powerful horse with a rider, it evokes certain feelings. And so and depending on the context, like a lot of symbols, they have different meanings in different contexts. These are, horses with lions' heads. It's very martial in its appearance, ready to fight, ready to kill. And they are speaking things. They're talking fire and smoke and brimstone, and that is what brings about the deaths of the third part of men. And so also, the four angels that are bound have something to do with this army, right? Because they were bound, they were prepared to slay the third part of men, the four angels. But then we get to 200 million. How do we get from point A to point B? When I said that the key is somehow caught up in this, in the description, I think. Is I suppose that the four angels have more to do with the horses than the horsemen. They provide the means to draw men out. And maybe the the three unclean spirits of the sixth vial are a different aspect of the same thing. It just bugs me that it's not the same number. Okay. So again, their power is in their mouth and in their tails. Oops. For their tails were like unto serpents, and had heads, and with them they do hurt. Another interesting thing. They have tails, and I've talked about the symbology of the tail. The head is, well, in one of the prophets it says, the head is the ancient and the honorable, and the tail is the prophet that teacheth lies. There's the overt attack. The thing that you know is like the active oppression. Like a head oppression is when the government comes in and starts telling people how to live their lives, or how you must come forth to the battle. Like a draft. And is my sound okay? Like a very overt, when you're dealing with the head, you're dealing with the head. A tail, though, is more subversive. A tail attack, like it has a tail that's like a serpent and has a head, but it's the tail of this creature, and that's even though tails are somewhat serpentine, like we had the scorpion's tails on the locust army previously. Now we have serpent tails with heads, with which they hurt. And it's no coincidence that it is serpents, because in the midst of all the things that are going on in the book of Revelation, we have the serpent, the dragon, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, called the old serpent because he's identified with the serpent of Genesis. He is the dragon, the serpent, the devil, the angel of the bottomless pit. And so the idea of a tail which does hurt is the idea of a subversive thing. That's why the prophet that teaches lies was symbolically linked to a tail. Because it is not an overt it is like, well, this is what you ought to do. It is much more of a subversive, undermining, and control through not through overt power, though sometimes it gets mixed up like that in the world, but it generally represents like something that undermines that sneaks up on you from an unexpected place, like the tail. So the horses had serpent tails, which is a manifestation of Satan's power. And again, they have heads so that they can do the things the heads do, just as the power of the horses is in their mouth. This is the horses. The men on the horses they get flowers and fire on them. Now you could say like, oh, it's because their armor is flashing, and I guess so. But the horses are the ones doing the damage. And the rest of the men which were not killed by these plagues, yet repented not of their works of their hands, that they should not worship devils and idols of gold, and of silver and brass and stone and of wood, which can neither hear nor see nor hear nor walk. And so that one right there, that's, notice that they repented now of the works of their hands, that they should not worship devils. Like I said, in the book of Revelation, it makes it clear that it says in chapter 12 or 13, they worshiped the dragon, which gave power to the beast. And they worshiped the beast. But the dragon is that old serpent called the devil and Satan, who was cast out into the earth. Whatever's going on here has to do with him. And even the deaths of a third of men could be symbolic of something else. And this I do not entirely dispute. I do think there's going to be plenty of death and destruction in the tribulation. But I don't know what that would be symbolic of otherwise, because it is contrasted with the rest who are not repenting of worshiping devils, idols of gold, silver, and brass, and stone, and of wood. It goes down from the most, the devils, idols of gold, and then it goes down the value to wood. Because ultimately at the bottom of a lot of what people are doing in like the book of Revelation, and the reason they're deceived and the reason they go after the devil is because they do not worship the living God. And at the bottom of it all is their lust of things. They've focused on this is very typical of humans, and it's understandable on some level that the gold, silver, brass, idolatry is not just having the wrong God. Our God is not an idol like the others, and you will hear people try to link it up like that. It's like, well, your God is just another God like all the other gods, like Zeus or Allah. What's the difference? What makes your God different? Well, they'll say the only reason you believe in your God is because of geography. I won't say that has nothing to do with it, but to say that's the only reason is ridiculous. Anytime someone tries to put the only reason for almost anything, they're probably wrong, because almost everything has, is more complicated than having just one variable determining why it exists or why the particular situation is as it is. It's very rare you're just like, oh, the only reason is just one thing. Just one thing. I'm pretty sure I've said the only reason a lot of times too, but it's probably not exactly correct. On a fundamental level, it's not just about having the right God, but the right thing. The kingdom of heaven, like that Jesus preached, happy are you that hunger and thirst after righteousness. But the gods of the heathen are very often like, well, this is the God of, the harvest, because we are really worried about the harvest. We want to make sure the God who's in charge of that gets honor. And this is the goddess of fertility, and we want to make sure she gets all her honor due, because we want our women to give birth to healthy babies and to be fertile. And this over here is, and then you could even say this is the God of justice here, and we just want to make sure that justice is done. We don't want to offend the God of justice lest he come down on us, so we honor him and blah, blah, blah. So it's not just, the reason I throw that one in is because all their gods are not merely abstractions based on carnal things, but they are in themselves abstractions of concepts like justice and such like that, or wisdom, the gods of wisdom. But it still doesn't get at the root of what God is supposed to be and why we should honor him. And I kind of God is the creator, and it is well for the creatures whom he has made to look upon God with thanksgiving. And this kind of God idolatry is usually focused on what can I get What do I have to do to appease? What do I have to give to receive? And the works of offering. Idols always require offerings. Even in your life, the things, if we want to have, I often say, like, people say, like, I wish I could have more kids, but I can't afford it. I know, me neither. But a lot of times what they mean is having a brand new car in the driveway, or living in a house that's much bigger than actually we need, or getting those new electronic devices every time they're updated. I still don't have a smartphone, even though they're very cheap. My wife has one. But I don't. But I bought her the $50 one, not like the $500, or I don't know how much they cost. I know the Apple iPhones are incredibly, ridiculously expensive, and they don't do anything more than the cheap ones do. The functions, there's no extra functions. It's the same thing. Does it spit out gold coins? I don't know. But a lot of times people, they sacrifice the things they say they care about or are good. They'll say, "Oh, I wish I had more time, but I really, this is so much." Which is like, I sacrifice that good thing that I could have this other thing which I value more. Like, I'm gonna limit myself to 1 or 2 kids because money is actually much more important to me. My once-a-year vacations are actually much more important to me. And even if you're not consciously saying that, on some level that has to be the truth, is it not? It's like, I don't want to struggle. I need to prepare for retirement, and they go about this, and I'm not gonna say you're doing wrong, but what I'm saying is we all make choices, and we ought to look carefully at what we choose, because what we choose is saying a lot about who we are. And we gotta be careful we aren't building idols in our lives that turn our hearts away from God. Because a lot of things we pursue in life can turn us and our hearts away from God. I think in the parable of the wedding, when it says, the king sent out a call. I've prepared my wedding. Come to the feast. And the people who were bidden, they made light of it. And they went, one to his field and the other to his merchandise. I forget what the two. I know that one goes to his merchandise. Off to my merchandise. The king has called us forth to his wedding. And then the rest of that parable, they go out and they compel everyone to come in, and there shows up a guy without a wedding garment. Didn't have respect enough to dress up for the wedding. We all got to dress ourselves up for the wedding, for the kingdom of God. That means being attentive to it and having respect for the things you say you believe in. Because for so many people, their Christianity is no different than idolatry. It's no different. There's no, they don't really have respect for what they're heading into. And what really sets our God apart, as I was saying this to somebody, I believe the Bible, right? I believe in it as a way to learn about God, as the way to learn about God. I don't know any other. Well, there are other ways actually. God could reveal Himself to you. So, no, it's just the Bible. No, God can. You telling me God can't do what He wants to do? People don't like that because they think that well, then anyone could claim God. Yeah, anyone can claim that. That's, in fact, they do. What do you think all the preachers on TV, they got some sort of special thing going on. That's why they're up there, and that's why people are throwing money at them, because everyone believes they have some sort of special relationship with God, better than everyone else, and they need to be up there bringing the message to the world. We need these people up there. Lost the track of my thought. Let me have a sip of coffee. Oh, yeah. No, I remember. What sets it apart is that, I believe in the Bible, but but I believe in the reason I believe in Jesus is not so much because of the Bible. Meaning the Bible isn't what makes me believe in Jesus. It's not. Because I believed in Jesus before I knew anything about the Bible. I barely knew anything. And I was already a believer in Jesus. I wasn't a very strong believer, and the Bible helps strengthen our faith by increasing our understanding. But that's not why I was believing. The number one reason I believe is because of my subjective experience with God in seeking to make contact with God. That's why I believe, because I sought God, and the ways in which God, or I feel that God has interacted with me, caused me to be a more and more of a believer in Him, primarily. And the reality of that relationship is what really sets it apart from other kinds of religious experience, when you're just going through the motions to, let's get the fertility. What can I get from these gods that are controlling the world around me? That superstition of how might I keep them from interfering with my life? You know what I mean? Sometimes that's almost the way people approach God. It's like, how can I get Him to not interfere with me? They don't want a deeper relationship with God. They want to make sure they can keep Him at arm's length. All right, before we do the last verse, let's just throw up. I'm become less good at doing this all the time. I should probably do it right at the beginning. Subscribe to this channel. Click on the like button for more study songs and more. Visit oraclesofgod.org. There's my other YouTube channel. And if you have a question, send your question to questions@oraclesofgod.org. And then you can always put it in the comment section, of course. But sometimes you may feel embarrassed about a question, maybe you think it's a stupid question. So you can send it to an email address, and I keep it all anonymous, so I'm not going to reveal your personal information. And so you can ask the question, and you don't have to have it permanently on the comments of YouTube. I understand why people would not want to use that. You can also use the live chat, but nobody usually does, and that's fine. It's another place to, it's there forever, and then it's like, wow, I said something stupid, and you feel like you wish you could just delete it. That's why for so long, a long time ago, I decided that when I go on the internet, I'm going to do everything in my own name. I'm not going to use a handle. I'm going to be Paul Stringini. Because that, in a way, it frees me from, one, having to worry about protecting my identity, and two, it makes me think about the things I say. It makes me realize I have to be accountable for the things I say, because they're going to be attached to my name forever. Or, like the Lord Jesus said, men, and how prophetic was it also that He said that men shall give account of every idle word. They shall give account thereof in the judgment. And in the world now, we're even already seeing that sort of come about, where people make just an offhand joke, and all of a sudden their lives are destroyed because people misunderstood their intent. And that is interesting. But I go by my name because I also want to see where I'm not free. Like when I think of saying something and I think maybe I shouldn't say that. I'm not allowed to say that. So that's where my freedom ends. That's where they've got it whittled down to, where they've got me afraid. I'm not afraid of much, but there's some things that you shouldn't say, because you will bring down unnecessary scrutiny on yourself. Like if you say the wrong things, people just will jump on you. Even if you entertain the wrong thoughts. And I love to entertain thoughts, and that's a problem for me. I'll think things that you're not supposed to think about. Okay. Neither repented they of their murders, like murder. And I'll say a few this is, like, I'll say a few things. This isn't anything I think I would be afraid of speaking, but it's the kind of things, like, you shouldn't think like that. But, like, people are always shooting up schools, right? I was like, why has it got to be schools? Why pick on kids? There's something about schools that makes people hate schools. That's probably what I think it is. Is like, there's something going on there. Like, why do they shoot up schools? Because they went to a school, probably did something, had an effect. They thought this is the place to go, and some people shoot up their workplace. We had a recent one here in Illinois, far from here, but there was someone came in and shot up their workplace. It makes sense because they know the people there. But I was wondering, I always thought, well, whatever. I was like, if I had fantasies, it would be of, like, in the middle of the night blowing up the bank buildings. Hopefully nobody's there. I would hope, I don't want to hurt anybody, but, like, banks really make me angry. Like, that's where my fantasies go. That's foolishness. But, even so, on a more serious note, murders, sorceries, fornication, thefts. I'm not, because I only have a short time. I want to actually. Am I right? Wait, is my eye deceiving me? Oh no! Wait. Oh, I have a lot more time than I thought. Okay. All right, we have a lot of time, so we'll probably go into chapter 10 a bit. Murders. Jesus taught us that murder is not merely murder, but that also, like, whoever will say to his brother Raka, or whoever calls his brother a fool, is in danger of the judgment, is in danger of hellfire. Because the Pharisees, were very letter of the law, and so, you do no murder, you think, I'm not a murderer. But depending on how we, what do I want to say, the way we despise our brethren or people around us, it is showing in us the same spirit which brings about, the spirit that brings people to murder, because they don't hold other people's lives at the same value. I would say, like, in an argument, when I used to argue less righteously, and I used to be inclined. I would say, to someone that they were being stupid, or, certain, because you get frustrated, and what you want to, and you say, well, you're stupid. And they think, well, they are stupid, but. Maybe they are, or maybe very often what it is I'm not able to convince someone, and so I want to find a reason why this is. And maybe they aren't actually stupid, but I can't figure out why they won't see my point of view. It's probably because I'm not making the point well enough, or they can't hear me, or whatever. There's a lot of reasons. Sometimes in an adversarial thing, when people are arguing, they literally can't hear the other side, because all they're really thinking about is how to counter it. They're not actually considering it. It's not necessarily a wise thing to do. I mean, we should listen, because we're not always right. But it's like, I think that a lot of times it's like, no, what it is you don't really think they're stupid. What it is you want to tell them they're stupid so that they can think you think they're stupid, or whatever. But it's basically to make the other person feel bad. It's just, the only purpose of really doing that in an argument is to degrade the other person. And say, like, you know what? You aren't intelligent enough to like, your lack of intelligence, to basically blame an immutable characteristic. You know what I mean? Say, like, there's an immutable characteristic about you, something you can't change, that is actually dividing us from each other. And my attitude towards you is actually hatred. In spite of this immutable characteristic of lack of intelligence, I'm still angry with you. You know what I mean? It's just such a... If you genuinely think someone can't understand because they're stupid, you should be kind and more understanding. It's like, not everyone has the same gift. It's not easy to teach someone. Someone's been indoctrinated, they're going to cling to it. And if they can't understand another point of view because they're stupid, telling them that is not going to make them open up to other possibilities. Generally, people who are unintelligent also don't realize it. Why am I talking about stupidity in the midst of murder? Because very few of us will ever think we are murderers. We won't see ourselves as murderers. We don't think ourselves capable of murder. We say, well, I'm not a murderer. You know, like those people. Murderers deserve this. Murderers deserve that. You know, but you don't, but you know, what you're capable of far more than you know. You don't know that you are not a murderer. You may be not a murderer simply because you've never had a reason to murder. You know, the despising your brother was good enough because he doesn't need to be dead. But with that attitude towards someone, it doesn't take much. I mean, it takes something, right? The Lord Jesus was trying to tell us that our sins go deeper than the outward expression of those things. That murder begins somewhere. It begins when you despise your fellow men. Sorceries. Now, I believe that's pharmakia, and I'm going to check that real fast here. That's all. People always say pharmakia. Drugs. But, yeah, pharmakia, which we get pharmacy from, and it says the use of medicine, drugs, or spells. They didn't repent of their pharmaceuticals. I don't believe that, like, a lot of people will equate, well, like the use of illicit drugs. Maybe. First of all, just talking about legitimate pharmaceuticals or even supplements and stuff like that, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. Just general stuff for health, or even pain relievers if you're in pain. Like when they gave Jesus water mingled with gall. A lot of this is sour wine and stuff. It's got alcohol in it. Sometimes it's meant to deaden pain. But I don't feel like, well, because here, for one, like, there's like a scripture in the Old Testament that says, you know, and they sought to their physicians, right? And someone once asked me, like, I don't know if I should see a doctor because of this verse. You know, they rather sought to their physicians instead of seeking to the Lord. Like, you understand, in the Old Testament times and in this time, doctors were not science-based things. It was kind of magical. And it was not necessarily a good thing to go to the doctor. A lot of doctors were quacks. They often did more harm than good. You know, by doing the wrong, you know, like, he's got a fever. He needs, you know, pack him in ice. I don't know. You know, they did things that were intuitively, seemingly right, but actually very destructive and harmful. Whereas today's doctor is more akin to a auto mechanic, as far as, like, it's a very, they study the body, they know things about it, they know the structure, and there's nothing in common with the modern physician and the physicians that they'd be referring to in the Old Testament. There's no common ground between the two. It's not based on hocus pocus. So we're basing it on the knowledge which God has made readily available to humanity through study of the natural world. So it's not a witchcraft type thing. Now, I remember hearing people talk about things like there's a drug out there. I'm not going to mention it, just whatever, because it's like then that puts the idea in people's heads to go look it up and maybe try it, whatever. Or people use drugs to try to have spiritual experiences. They try to find God through the use of hallucinogens and stuff. And to me, that is sorcery. That's sorcery. That's trying to use, because I forgot what someone used the analogy of looking into God's sock drawer, so to speak. Like what's in where are all his secrets? I think that through hallucinogens they can pierce the veil. And if they're here in the world, it's an interesting question of why are they there? In my young days, I used hallucinogens and stuff. Not a whole lot, but a whole lot at one time, a couple times, but not a whole lot, meaning over a long period of time. I just tried it, maybe a dozen times. And but I wasn't trying to have a spiritual experience. You know what I mean? I wasn't. But here's the thing: is you don't know what you're going to have. Actually, it's funny because the night where I turned to the Lord, where I decided to become serious about my religion and totally stop pursuing a law career or anything like that, was the reason I called out to God was because I'd never done that much LSD, and everything was and it was piled on with other drugs and alcohol. It was like a lot of LSD. I don't think I'd ever smoked that much marijuana, and I'd had on top of it probably the equivalent of about 8 alcoholic drinks. And I felt that I thought I just, I did it. I went and I overdid it, and I thought I'm going to die now. That I felt just very bad, because when you're on LSD, you can't really go to sleep. So I wasn't feel like I was falling asleep. I felt like I was dying. And that's why I called out to the Lord in my distress and said, please save me. I'm going to just serve you after this. I'm not going to pursue this any longer. The craziness of what I was. I don't know. What was I doing? I was just, I don't know, I can't get into my mind. I was just pursuing experiences and stuff. I don't know what it was just, to me, it wasn't like I was trying to find God. I was just trying to amuse myself. I was just trying to amuse myself. And, I don't know, I guess, and I just tended to just go overboard. I have a tendency to be a somewhat extreme person. Hence, that I made that promise in prayer, and the next day I tried to start making good on it. I started reading my Bible, and I actually I had to call my dad to send me my Bible because I didn't take it with me to school. It was back when I was in college, so I was 18, 19. I was 19 by the time that happened. It would have been just because I believe that was second semester. But, some people use drugs in an over attempt to see, contact the spirit world. And the thing is, I don't know, like our minds, I believe, have the capacity to interact with God and with devils. That's what demonic possession is. Some sort of, let's say it's some sort of mental, they say, well, they thought they were demon possessed, but what it was is they were actually mentally ill. They had some sort of mental disorder. I'm like, Okay, that's what they used to call that. I mean, it's like that's what they used to call it. They used to call it demon possession. But there's something wrong with the person. Something wrong with their brains. And when you start taking drugs that affect your brain, who knows what you're going to see into. But you're not going to see anything that God doesn't want you to see. That's for sure. But you may see things that are not good for you. I don't know. I mean, like I said, I've done some things, but it's like and I look at things and they say, I realize this, that I used to have a different sort of attitude in life. I was young, I was light, and I can't imagine doing that now, because I feel like I would be so terrifying now, because my life has changed so much, and there's so much riding on me. I don't think I could just lightly, I'll just do some hallucinogens. I just got 8 kids and a wife. I can just pop some, I don't even know how you take some of these new things. I just pop a few tabs and away I go on a journey of 12 hours of insanity. I can't spare 12 hours of insanity. But anyways, so it definitely has something to do with the use of drugs. But I think specifically not curative drugs or medicinal things, but in context like the things that would lead people to try to use it to sort of cheat their way into a divine experience. You know what I mean? Because you're not experiencing the divine, you're experiencing the earthly. Because it's stuff of the earth. And it's opening your mind up, sure. I know people talk about having profound experiences and such, and it's like, the things that I've experienced sober were so much better, because I don't have that thing in my mind, well, it was just the drugs. I was like, no, I was sober. I was clean. When I received the Holy Spirit and His power came on me, I was completely sober. I hadn't touched anything for days, because back then I had a big problem. But I'd cleaned up because I knew I was going to this church, so I stopped taking stuff. I wanted to make sure I was clean. And then it was even the day after that, it was actually 4 days since I'd used anything. And back then all I was doing was smoking pot and drinking alcohol. But it'd been a good 4 days. And also it was nothing like, it's not like when I smoked pot I had the experience that I was having when I found the Lord, or when the Lord came to me and put His Spirit on me. It was a different experience entirely. Fornications and thefts. We're out of time. But, we've already talked about fornication in relationship to, yes, there's little fornication. And there's also, as Jesus said, in terms of adultery, there's looking at a woman to lust after her. I'm going back to the Sermon on the Mount because I do use that, because it's like there's more to be said than just literally doing the deed. But of course, in Revelation, you have to keep in mind that Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth, she corrupts the world with her fornication, because she is a fornicator. She's not an adulteress, because she is only betrothed, because the church is the bride of Christ, not the wife. Not yet. Not until we get to chapter 19. Yeah. At that point, the bride becomes the Lamb's wife, because He's ready to take her to Himself. And she is faithful to Him and waits for Him. But the great whore is that aspect of, at least that which is externally Christian, it claims to be Christian. And until the great apostasy, like I always say, if you say you're a Christian, you're a Christian. I don't get into this like trying to say, well, a real Christian. It's like, whatever. I see good and bad Christians all over the place. It's like, that's a pointless debate. You're a Christian something, Might be a Christian heretic, might be a Christian apostate, but it's a Christian something. So that, when we talk about fornication, we can think about it in those terms, and also theft. Again, there's literal theft, but there's also things, you know, we can rob one another through not giving one another what is due. We can rob God and not giving him what is due. There's more to theft than literal theft. I mean, it's like you can say, like, well, I never steal, but you know, it's like when they pass the laws like Good Samaritan laws, like we're required to help someone out in a bad situation. I mean, certainly, I don't think you're required, like, if someone's got a gun, you've got to rush him, you know, but you are required, like, if you see, like an old lady fall down and I can't get up or something like that, it's like, you know, if you just go like, huh, and you keep walking and do nothing and something bad happens to that person, you can be criminally responsible, and that's probably right. I think it is right. And certainly you're morally responsible if I don't have that understanding of the law right, where they have Good Samaritan laws. We have obligations to one another, you know, in a sense of also, like, and I'm not going to go off, we're going to finish this up, but, like, you know, when I don't realize my full potential, in a sense, I'm robbing people. If I'm not doing all I can do, I'm robbing the world of what I could be. You know, if I'm not living up to what God has made me to be, if I'm shirking my responsibilities, if I am not building myself into the man that I can be, and all the things I can offer, in a sense, I've robbed the world, or my brethren, or whatever context, my family you want to put that in. There's more to theft than just thieving. Anyways, thanks for joining me in this study. We'll pick up with chapter 10 tomorrow. And let's find here we go. And
thus I saw the horses moving, and on the sound of them, having breastplates of iron.